call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Whitehurst if he would lead us in our prayer and pledge.
Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, just thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for Cameron and his continued healing being here, Lord. Be with Tammy and everybody else that's had issues, and have their continued healing, and be with those traveling and giving them traveling mercies, and just be with our schools and the leaders, and help us to guide us and make decisions that help this county and make it better than ever. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitehurst. At this time, do I hear a motion to adopt our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Welcome to everyone that's here. We're glad that you're here tonight. Thank you for being here on our adjusted Tuesday schedule. At this time, I'd like to call Mr. Masters up, please.
There are two things I would like to present. The first would be the trip cost per mile. So we have been charging $1.25 per mile for athletics for all student trips. And just kind of wanted to give you some idea how we arrive at that estimation. So we take the initial cost of the bus, which, as you know, is steadily increasing. By the time we install cameras and air conditioning, we're approaching $150,000 per unit at this point. So we expect that that bus will last between 300 and 350,000 miles total. So we're using 300,000 for the life cycle of the bus. Then we add in the fuel use at the fleet average of 7.4 miles per gallon. So a bus is using about 40,000 gallons of diesel during its lifetime. And we multiply that up times the cost per gallon. And then oil changes and filters every 10,000 miles, tires about every 60,000 miles. We can't let those get below 230 seconds on the back, 430 seconds on the front. Brakes have to be changed at regular intervals about 35,000 miles. On a regular vehicle, you check the drums and change the brakes, but on a bus, you replace the drums every time. So that bumps the cost up a little bit. The diesel exhaust fluid, about half of our fleet is using diesel exhaust fluid. And then other small items like seat repairs and so forth. You take all of those expenses and divide them out by the 300,000 miles, and that gives us an estimate of what it costs us to run the mile, each mile of the bus on average. I'm recommending that we go up to $1.50 to avoid going in the hole as the cost goes up. So that's my recommendation. Do you have any questions on the cost per mile on the bus? Anyone?
How long was that? $1.25. Just curious.
Pardon?
How long was it at $1.25? Just curious.
It's been right at a year that we were at $1.25.
Yeah.
And I think before that maybe we were at $1.20.
Yeah.
So it's not jumped a lot, and it's surprising that that seems like, to me, a very small amount. to run a huge bus. You're carrying 77 kids potentially. But when you get right down to the cost of all of the life cycle components, and that's how we arrived at that.
I know we don't want to, bad to put it this way, you're not shooting for profit, you're wanting to cover. Is $1.50 enough to cover? Because those can get, with the way the economy is working, a drum today may be a completely different price 2 weeks from now. Is that $1.50 enough?
It is enough, but what's not in the picture, it's a little more than enough.
Okay.
It's slightly more than enough, but what doesn't come into the picture is if you have to replace an engine, that's about $25,000.
Right.
A transmission, $15,000 or so, and a rear end over $5,000 now. So those are the things that cause us to have to run just a little above our tabulated cost.
Good.
We've replaced 3 engines in the last 3 years. So it's a reality that does sometimes happen before you reach the life cycle.
That's right.
Okay. Excellent.
Mr. Masters, are we about, I know we have such a large area to cover, as opposed to neighboring counties. Are we average or
We're on the
Oh,
low end.
really?
Yes, we're on the low
Okay.
end. Of course, generally, the larger the district, Orange County, is going to be quite a bit more
Right.
on their cost per mile than we are. We're very efficient, and we have for a long time ran right on the conservative end of it. And we just need to bump up because we're getting so we can't get our parts in quickly, and we're struggling to keep our fleet's kind of aging because when you're building schools, you don't buy buses. So we're recovering. If we can purchase about 5 buses a year, we'll get back in real good condition fairly quickly.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
This is an actionable item,
Right.
so we're looking.
Yes, do I hear a motion?
Move to accept Mr. Masters' recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Masters.
Okay. I just wanted to touch briefly on the Traversa implementation. We have quite an investment in that using our grant dollars. And so each bus now has the system mounted to install a tablet. Each bus is running with a tablet. The tablet is used to do the pre-trip inspection, but it's used to track every student that's on the bus. Mr. Bennett did a presentation not long ago, so I'm not going to try to go into great detail, but we're at the point now as the driver rolls up to a stop, the pictures of the students who are going to get on at that stop come up on the screen. And as they come on with their student card, they can scan their cell phone. It clicks them off of the system, and all of that helps to tabulate our attendance for the state funding. So that's going to be a great help to us for the first year or so. We're going to keep a paper copy of everything as well to be sure the 2 systems are accurate together. But eventually, the survey information will be kept electronically through this Traversa system. To me, one of the great benefits is when you put a sub-driver on that bus, usually we're able to run a sub-driver several times on the bus before they actually run the route. Occasionally that is not possible, and so they're left struggling to find where every stop is. And if you miss a student and have to circle back, now you're 15 or 20 minutes late. So knowing exactly what the directions are, now the tablet fades out when you begin rolling because you can't be messing with a live tablet while you're going down the road. But as you roll up, it pops up which students will get on and where the next stop is. You have directions, and it's keeping a verbal commentary going of what you're going to do. Even though the tablet itself is dead, you can't mess with it, it's still telling you, just like the GPS in your car. So it has a lot of benefits. We were blessed to be able to initiate that during this past school year. Our original goal was to get it in place at the beginning of next year, but it worked out that all of our drivers are trained now. Mr. Bennett has been around and talked to every school about the student cards. The more you can use that card for, the more likely the student's going to carry it. If it works for the library, for the cafeteria, they're going to have it with them. But if it's only for the bus, it's going to be a fight. So he's working hard to help us with that, and I think he plans to meet with all of the principals again at the beginning of this school year concerning student card use. Do you have any questions on the Traversa?
I think it's great to see those pictures when they get on.
That's cool.
Looking for it. It's wonderful technology.
And if a student steps on the bus to scan and they're not supposed to be at that stop, it flashes red and alerts the driver, this student is not supposed to be on the bus. And then that avoids a potential problem if someone is angry and wanting to slip around and ride the bus and settle a score or something. It's just one more way of, even if a self-driver's on the bus, preventing that from happening. So there are a few things we have to get in place for the new year, printing the cards for the pre-KK students that haven't ridden before and new enrolled students. Then we'll have to update all the routes to begin the year. Any questions, anyone?
Thank you very much for that great
you.
information.
I appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it.
That's cool.
Mr. Stockman?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I get started, I'd like to say I'm glad to see people back here and healthy also.
Good to be
Brandon
seen.
looks like he picked up right where he left off. So, as per our discussion in the parking lot. I'm here tonight, well, I'm blank. I'm here tonight to update the board and on the budget for the construction project for the warehouse. I'm also going to be asking for an increase to the budget. I'm going to go through what I got here and explain where we're at now in my estimation. So the project includes 4,800 square foot warehouse, which is for shipping and receiving, food, nutrition, service, technology, and a secure test and materials room. Also includes the project 1,800 square foot office space that will be used by technology, food, nutrition, services, and for secure record storage files. Be able to have, our vault back here is busting and we need a place close to be able to keep files. They have to go back and secure a place. It's been a long project and proud that we're going to be completing it soon. With the cost escalations and due to the COVID pandemic, mostly, we found it necessary to take on a lot of the project in-house to keep costs down as much as possible. This along, keep costs down as much as possible. This, along with maintenance department already heavy workload, has extended completion of the project severely past mine or anyone else's expectations. The good news is we almost to the finish line, but in spite of it all, and all of our efforts, we fell short on meeting the budget. I believe you should be able to see on your computers a copy of the updated copy of the original budget. That also includes cost up to this point and estimated remaining expected cost. Everybody got that? Okay. I want to go through this line by line to help everybody understand what we're dealing with, cost escalations, and maybe a little reasons why. On the concrete cost, the two biggest hits we call are concrete and the site work. On the concrete cost, we had a big increase in the cost of material and labor, and we had some added foundations from the engineer from our original estimates from the metal company. He did large foundations, and to make him feel better, we could have followed him on that, but we thought it was best to go with his suggestions. And some of that is just, and all of these, you know, I fall on the knife. A lot of this is something that I just underestimated, had no idea that we'd be dealing with these cost increase.
When was this like originally estimated? There were,
The original budget, as far as,
right, you're,
it's 400.
no, when?
With,
That-
Oh, it was in
2018, 18 or 19?
2019. We didn't actually start the project till January, actual
break ground?
break ground till January of 2020.
Right,
And by that time, when we started doing stuff, everything had already started going
Right.
up. So
so you know,
it just, you know, and it just snowballed.
yeah.
The building installed, you know, we had that on a sealed bid, so we're pretty good on it. We got it early on, but we had some delays with engineering, both building and structural and site. Had a long delay on site engineering. Had a big problem with that, getting it completed.
Right.
But on the building, we don't have much remaining other than some metal panels and trims to off the bottoms of awnings, some gutters and downspouts, and a roof to tie the two buildings together, where technology will go out of their offices into the warehouse with the computers and bring them back and forth. So that was in the original design to
Okay.
cover that big double doors thing come and go.
Okay.
Still have that to do. On the plumbing and connection to the city, those two kind of merge. They're separate on the sheet, but they kind of merge because in an effort to save some money after we got to investigating, we could tie into existing meters and sewer connections down by our maintenance yard and not have to pay the cost to city to boring under the road, new meters, new service, and that would be a recurring cost also,
That's right.
the new service.
Mm.
So we subbed out the site work to tie in the sewer and water, and then in-house we completed the finished plumbing inside the building, rough in on that in-house. We saved some money there, overestimated cost of those two projects. And that, the next thing was insulations. We spray foamed the exterior walls of anything in conditioned space, because we thought that was going to be our best. I had budgeted a little bit high, but we also had some insulation cost in the framing and interior framing to soundproof and areas that was exposed to the warehouse. So some of the interior framing and sheet work cost overages was due to that, because we got some insulation in that, not a big cost, but we also made some changes. We thought would improve the project and give us more options for future use in the warehouse areas. We originally intended on putting plywood and painting it on the walls in those warehouse areas of the testing materials room, the technology warehouse, and food service warehouse. Well, after discussion and move on through the project, we realized that we may be a need for those rooms to be something else, and sometimes we already have that with the testing materials room. It's probably going to be used for some training at some point. So we ended up doing sheetrock and suspended ceilings in there to go ahead and get that done instead of having to come back and revisit it. On the electric, we completed in-house on the electric, and I believe that saved us a dramatic amount of money between not our estimated budget, but what an actual cost would have been, because that's another thing that everything went sky high on. Same with the HVAC. If you look at it, the HVAC is ridiculously low. There's a reason for that. We were able to do that in-house at a great savings, not sure, because we didn't go out and try to quote it once we realized we had to start doing this. But we were able to use funding from another source, not this project, so it's helped the overall budget for this, for most of the work. We had some stuff that we purchased before the other funding source started, or we was able to do that, so that's where that dollar figure is. On the site work, we had a major cost escalation in this area due to a few cost increases, and the design and redesign of the drainage, flow, and retention ponds to meet water management approval. It was designed, submitted, they come back and said, no, it's going to take more retention ponds than that to hold water in the Sand Hills of Bronson, which is ridiculous, but that's what happened. And that's not the only reason. I definitely underestimated this area on it. I was going with what I knew and the estimates I got. We did not have the civil site work to make our best guess who's trying to get this thing approved and move on, you know, to get this project going. Increase in the incidentals, some of that was due to purchase of equipment that were needed for use in the warehouse, but not included in the original budget. We had some stuff that we need. Shelving, we didn't, budget for that. Had a dock leveler installed, which is a great asset. Miss Julia helped contribute, I think, half of that, is that correct? And also for another contribution, forklift. She was able to fund through her money that forklift, and something, again, not budgeted, but she was able to come up with that, so that helps. And then the pre-construction services, the site engineering, I did not allow for, just me being me. I'm used to building, and this is your building cost, and I didn't allow for that. And we also had pre-construction, well, not pre-construction, but security fencing that we put up temporary to secure the area for construction and keep people from being able to get in the yard. That was a cost, but it came back to the rest of the district as we took that fence down and was able to use it in other places. So that wasn't a waste of money. And then the water management permits was something that I did not include. The long and short of it is, my estimation, we're about $77,000 short. I know that's a big number. I think you'll find, and Mr. Lott could speak to it, the cost escalation at the high school that was during the same time was dramatic as well. I feel like without the help of our staff here and on site, we'd be looking at a lot bigger numbers. So I'm asking for an increase in the budget so we can get this thing finished. The finish date It's kind of depending on site work contractors now, because I'm trying to get another cost from another one, just to see if we can save some money there. As soon as we do that, if we can get this passed, then we can move forward, get them under contract. So, I think that's about all the time I needed to take of yours, but does anyone have any questions regarding?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
ma'am.
The site work, so it's an additional, it's estimating right now, or you're estimating that it will be an additional 60,000.
We have those costs. That's not an estimate, and that's a little high, because I learned a little bit lesson of estimating to what I got my actual quote. I'm hoping to get another one that may come in less.
So does that include everything in the brackets, the site work?
Everything in
Yeah, I
Did
think-
it-
yes,
So the estimate of $60,000 just includes the loading dock, paving, and retention pond?
well, the paving is not included in that, because we're be able to use, road tax money?
Fuel tax. rebate.
Fuel tax money to do the paving. Also in some of this, with the use of the dirt, the topsoil, we're going to be able to take some of it to the schools. It's always requesting sand for playgrounds. So we either have to pay people to move it off-site or take it to somewhere we can use it.
That's right.
But yes, ma'am, and that number, like I said, is a little high, but I don't want to have to come back again. We don't have to spend if we don't need to. And I realize that our loading dock, the design of that thing is just, I mean, you can run a tank into it. And I just grossly underestimated costs on that.
Yeah.
So total would be the 40 and the 60, 100,000, correct? 40 is actual and then 60, or is
Yes,
it?
sir.
Right.
And we hope to come in a little
Right,
less than that.
right,
And that's,
Right.
you know, I'll be the first to tell you that's unexcusable. I just
I mean, it's a 5-year-old
don't have an
budget.
Yeah,
answer.
it's an old plan.
It's an old budget, I mean, I would say, being in the construction business, stuff has about doubled in the last 3 or 4 years, so.
I firmly believe still that to get this structure and facility that we're getting, I believe you could add half again if we had hired a contractor
Right.
and built this.
Right.
I don't have any doubt in my mind, because there's no in-house worker on that.
Right.
So,
It's I figure it's only a 17% increase over
yes.
what your original budget was. I mean,
You don't know
inflation
how much-
alone,
You don't know how much it pains me to be standing here saying that.
yeah, inflation alone has been probably more than 17% the past
So,
4 years or close to it.
any other questions?
I don't know if my question is for you. Where are we getting this money?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Ms. White, I can sit here and not panic. We sold a little old Bronson Middle High School that has been supporting maintenance through the build of Chiefland Middle High School, but also had a piece earmarked for this project, and there are sufficient funds remaining in that capital account to finish this project based on the increase that is before you tonight.
Okay. I asked this for 2 reasons. We too deep in not to finish. So it's not a question of do we do this or not. But at the same time, I'm throwing this out as a reminder. And I took a hit a few years ago because I wanted a covered playground. And I got told, oh, it was promised over here, nothing against you people, before it was promised to a 35-year-old place. And I'm sitting here going, $77,000. We can't control the economy. And I live in that world, so I know. So I'm not knocking you on that. I'm not. I don't question this at all. And we are getting a bargain based on this.
What you're talking about.
But there's too many times I've looked at schools and gone, and I've said this before in these meetings. I've said this to you. I've had to look at people and go, no, we can't afford to do that. And then all of a sudden, we got to come up with another $70,000. So that's why I want to know where the money's coming from. That's all.
And in part, this is why we didn't spend 100, because we knew we had unforeseen expenditures on the horizon having to cover for building of Chiefland Middle High School. And here's another unforeseen.
Okay. I just bring it up again because before I leave, I would love to see a 35-year-old promise come through. That's all I'm saying. I ain't gonna beat that horse.
No, sir, I understand. And like
I
said,
just love to see it.
I enjoy coming
And that
up
ain't
and
cheap.
speaking before you. I don't enjoy coming up here and asking for money, or more money.
That being said, I thoroughly believe we too deep in. I hold nothing against Breezy Stockman on this because you can't control what has happened since that COVID
There were
mess.
things I could have controlled, and I.
You did a fine job. I believe we are looking at $1 million building that we got for $500,000. That's a bargain.
Yeah, I believe
I
so.
firmly believe if you don't make a mistake, you ain't done nothing.
I move approval on this,
I don't know if anybody else had any
but you have other questions.
Just.
Yeah, I do have a question. So you're asking for this money and you're asking for the backhoe money, right?
Yes, ma'am, I was gonna get into that.
That's next.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, all right, yeah, just all on the presentation. No, I mean, that my question is, for Ms. Lake as well, that, you know, where's that money coming from and making sure that, you know, we are covered and that we can do it, but I also agree that we are deep into it, and it is a much needed building for our maintenance department, so that's
Get
important.
finished, I'd like to schedule after one of the meetings,
A tour,
And,
yes, we'd love it.
you know, see.
It's a good thing we sold that Bronson building.
We, instead of putting VCT flooring in some of the building, in some of the offices, we went with a epoxy flake flooring, painted like a garage floor, in the technology departments, offices and warehouse, and in the food service warehouse storage area, and in the testing, not the testing, secure file storage room, because we believe that's going to give us better service for the long term. No waxing, no
Low maintenance.
stripping,
Low
Low
maintenance.
maintenance.
Yeah,
very low maintenance down the
that's
road.
working
In
wrong.
my opinion,
Save.
and I think it looks great.
And I don't know, maybe I should know, what's a secure testing room?
It's the testing materials that come in, that has to go out to the different schools in the county.
Okay,
They come in, they have to be under lock and key, one person with some blood on their finger. And this is part of where we moved during the project, because we don't have the need for as big a room as when this building started, because everything's electronic. So that's where we're gonna be able to use that. It's wired and has data access hookups for trainings, stuff like that. It's gonna be a finished room.
okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Before Mr. Stockman gets into there, so I will share that he mentioned about some of the HVAC, so, and that through our talking that we were able to use the ESSER funds and ARP funds, so for HVAC projects. One of them was Bronson Middle High School's gymnasium, and the other was Yankee Towns, so we were also able to tap in, have some other projects throughout the county, so. Yes, on one hand, we've seen some escalations and some inflation, but we've also been able to use some dollars that we didn't have that came into our budget, so wisely, so.
Probably saved us a bunch of money having probably the best AC man around working for
Really
us.
didn't hurt. So I wish he was here,
Here.
but he's on a well-deserved vacation, and I'd be having him standing up there helping explain some of this. But,
I'd like for him to be here just to ask him a question and watch him get nervous.
Oh, gosh.
okay, this is
Pick
the
on
good
him.
news of it, in my estimation. City of Chiefland, I learned a couple months ago, had purchased a new backhoe. We worked real close with the City of Chiefland on different projects when we need. If they have a need, we try to help them. And we've used the Spaco many times on some of our major digging at Chiefland. Well, they were gonna put it on auction, and after discussion with Shane King, the Public Works Director, and Ms. Laura Kane, the city manager, they agreed to ask their board if they would sell it outright to us. It's a John Deere 310C, four-wheel drive. It's got some age on it, but it gets very little usage because it was their backup for a long time now, so long that now they bought a new one, so their newest one is now their backup. So it's a very solid machine. We know by using it, and the commission agreed last night to approve the sale to us if we so wanted, and had your blessings to purchase it for $5,000. I think that's a heck of a deal. The tires, I mean, just the tires is a big cost, and they're in great shape. It's not like unlike any other old machine that has some ailments, you know, but we will not work it on a day-to-day. But we could rent a machine 3 times and spend that much money.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe that machine will last us 15 years.
What year is it, Breezy?
It's a 91.
How would it be to get parts on it right now if you needed it?
We discussed that. Mr. King said there was one part that they had to bypass that they hadn't been able to get. Not a major factor, but not something that affects operating the machine. They could not find availability on it. But we're gonna put some effort into finding that part too. But it's operational, runs, works fine, can be used. I don't think it's a John Deere, which is, you know, Caterpillar, John Deere, some of the major name brands. Your parts is gonna be pretty available. They got machines from the 60s and 70s still running.
For sure.
My father-in-law has one of them.
So I think that will be a big issue, but
Okay.
I can't guarantee that. And so I'm asking for your blessing to.
Do I hear a motion?
Purchase.
Do I hear a motion?
I make the motion.
Second.
Purchase tobacco.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you all for your
Uh-huh.
time.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Breezy.
Okay, Ms. Julia?
All that stuff was right after you.
I had it down.
Oh, no.
Well, that was-
I think that
I'm like,
I
which one?
thought you was backing off.
I did. Tammy was kind of getting into it with
I
Jimmy.
know, I saw that Jimmy look over there once. He was like, yeah, I know about this.
Good evening.
So I'm here today to request your blessing in raising the price for adult lunch meals from $3.75 to $4. My team and I put a spreadsheet together just to show you the prices from last year into this year, showing you the percentage. Some of them are outrageous, but a lot of it is produce. Produce is crazy. Just in the last month before school ended, from April to May, lettuce went up from $38 a case to $52 a case. But produce is out there very, very expensive. I put together here on the paper 4 meals that are the most
How much
common,
knife and fork?
between the chicken sandwich, the cheeseburger, pizza, or the chef salad. Those are the 4 most popular meals, especially purchased by adults. So I put those together so we can see them.
Okay.
All in all, 25 cents is a bare minimum. What it's gonna, it really isn't. I know you had asked Mr. Masters the same question, is that enough? I feel it's gonna be enough. If I average the meals, it came to, right now, it's costing us about $3.62 to make without labor. So going up to the $4 gives us that little break as produce goes up. And that's saying that adults, which they do, won't take an extra dressing or want a little extra here and there. It is another reason we have stopped, and I know restaurant-wise too, people have stopped doing the salad bars because the cost of produce. I would have to charge them like they do in the hospital per pound in order to make the money to recoup what we spend. So are there any questions about why I'm asking for 25 cents?
No, I think that's extremely fair and understand. What's the percentage that we have of the adults that eat?
This past year, it was lower. I don't have the exact for you. Some schools do better than others. Chiefland Elementary is the highest. They average about 10 to 12 adults a day. And then we have other schools that have none. So it varies with each school. And they also do special things, so we don't always just do what's on the
Right.
menu. Mercy at Chiefland L is very good about putting things together. And so is Kim at Bronson High. They do a lot of extra little things that they put together through their love and create exotic things sometimes. So I don't have a percentage per se.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you very much. That answers. Are there any other questions?
Miss Julia,
Yes, sir.
I'm going
Sometimes you're
to-
back.
I'm going to assume you didn't know I was going to be here, therefore you didn't bring samples. But
It's not on your new.
if $4 is a bargain, and I trust you,
Yes,
that's
it is.
enough, that's adequate.
Yes.
Okay, that was my question. You sort of answered it before I could ask it, but,
It is-
and I'm not trying to run up price. It sounds like I'm running prices up on everybody because I keep asking that question. But,
We're gonna have to go back.
you know, $4 with everything that's going on, if you say it's good enough, I believe you.
It is good enough, and we want to keep it affordable for the staff.
Yeah.
We really want them to eat, they don't have time to go out. I'm sure all of you have run through a drive-through lately, and $4 is a bargain.
It's a bargain.
$10, and they get actually more food. They could spend $10 at Hardee's for just the burger and the fry, and we actually give them at least five things in the meal.
Yeah, this is a deal
So
and a
we want
half.
to encourage them to eat healthier, eat with us, and get that participation up. As Paige asked, how much do we have? A lot of it is just time. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't have time. I know Williston High, now Chiefland High, they're so far away. They get their exercise just trying to get to us, so.
The fork and napkin increase
I know,
is
it's
It's
amazing.
not incredible.
unreal.
It was very hard to get them, so we actually had to go through a separate company
Mhm.
out of California to get them shipped here because there was a shortage. But we
Apple
were able to
slices.
get them.
Do they have to be do they have to be packaged by statute in
No,
your?
no, we actually have machines that dispense them, and the handle's only, you can see just the handle.
Just the
but
handle.
pull the handle. And we're getting those, I think we're almost completed on the 8 schools now, getting them in the area where the staff will eat. So they can pick their own fork, napkins, but it's all in a container that they can.
Okay. Is that why it went up, maybe because of the container? That, the whole, no?
It had to do with the plastics.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was because all those ships were sailing out, we couldn't get supplies. That was during COVID.
Right.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. It is very crazy. But I grabbed as much as we have. We actually have that warehouse that he's building. We have a whole bunch over there in the warehouse because I grabbed what we could at the time, so that way. It was scary. We had one day where the kids didn't have it. So we had to go with stuff they could eat with their hands, change the menu so they could eat with their hands. And that's not an easy task, so I didn't want to keep doing that. So we got a bunch stored, so it wouldn't happen again.
Didn't have spaghetti that day, did you?
It would have been a food fight day.
Oh, man.
They could have used
Been
the
awesome.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
I have one thing I'd like to piggyback off of Mr. Masters,
Okay?
and that's what the trooper said. Agreed with him on Mr. Morgan going around to the schools. We've worked with it. My team is super excited to start this. I feel like it's going to actually help the kids get through the line much faster, along with actually showing when we scan their badges, it will show us their allergies right away. It will tell us whether they've already got a meal. It will tell the parent what they've eaten that day, and it'll tell me if they're inactive or they're wearing somebody else's badge. So it's going to be, they switch them in the middle of class. So it's going to be a great thing. I'm all on board. I just want to let you all know. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Never occurred to me to switch badges.
Do you have
Ms.
do
Julia,
you
This is something
have
new to think about.
policies?
wellness and
Hi. Come back if you don't. Forgive me, I think I'm here just to keep it going. We're not at the 30 days yet, we're at the 14 mark, and we got another 14 to go. So,
Yes. Then do I hear a motion to continue to advertise or advertise?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
yes.
Okay, so that's both our wellness and policy and plan. Mr. Lott.
Good evening. I have 6 things to bring before you that I brought to you last time, but you weren't all here, so I'll really quickly probably go over some of my information. The first thing is I'd asked the board to entertain the notion of changing Chapter 8 of our board policies from maintenance, which is the title currently, to auxiliary. The reason being is because when we look at that chapter within the board policies, it's more diverse than just maintenance. For example, safe schools and different things are in there. It would also match what the NEFAC model policies are called, which are called auxiliary. So I think at this time we could actually entertain a motion to do so unless there are questions or any other discussion.
Would we have to advertise that or just do that?
That we don't have to advertise. It's just, I didn't have it on the agenda last time. We just discussed it. And so this time I would entertain or
Ask for a
want
motion.
to make a
So
motion
moved.
to
Second.
proceed.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. The next, we have 5 board policies that came to us, some of which were required by changes in law or state board rule, and others that that came to our attention needed some changes. The first one is 5.19, which is dealing with student records. And when we looked at these, there were several changes that came about because of the Parents' Bill of Rights, which I'm sure you're aware of. Some changes in FERPA, especially in regard to personal identifiable information, or PII, it's a new buzzword in education, I guess. We all have a lot of these acronyms. So because of that, when I looked at it, it was just easier due to the number of changes to basically scrap our old policy and just adopt the new model policy, which came to us from NEFAC. And so if there's any questions that I might answer at that point or this time on that one, I'll be glad to do so. If not, then we will bring this back to the board next meeting for your formal adoption.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. 5.38, this is one of the policies that we have to look at, and this particular policy every 3 years, and so this will be the 3rd year. And so the bullying and harassment policy, this is the 3rd year is required. The only changes in this policy from the old policy was that I changed the definitions of harassment and bullying to match the new CESR definitions, which came from the state, which you have already adopted in the Student Code of Conduct, which we changed. So it just matches up very well with what you've already adopted, and matches also the CESR definitions, which came from the state. Are there any questions on that one? 6.36, employee experience for salary purposes. We actually, in the old policy, had the wrong statute. The statute number had changed. We didn't even realize this until actually in negotiations, and we were talking about this particular policy. And when we looked it up, we tried to find the statute to confirm some of the stuff that's actually in the policy, and we couldn't find the statute. And so through investigation, we found out that the policy number had changed. And as you see, that's the only change in the policy from the old version, just correcting incorrect statute citation. Any questions on that one? Okay. 7.27, online educational service agreements and contracts. This is an entirely new policy. It's a model policy given to us by NEFECT. It's required by a new state board rule, 6A.1.0955. And again, a lot of this information or that is included in this policy deals with information security, protecting our students from data collection from vendors or others, which might jeopardize the safety of our students.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. And then the last one was 8.19, tobacco use in district facilities. As I explained before, our old policy basically said the same thing in one paragraph as this policy does. This policy is much more detailed. And this the reason for this particular policy coming before you was because of our relationship with the Union County Prevention Coalition. And they expressed to us that as part of some of their grant work, they would like for us to adopt this policy as opposed to the old policy to assist them. And they've been good partners with us. They both basically say the same thing. This one's just in more detail. And so we saw no reason not to help them fulfill their mission.
How does it assist them?
Sir?
How does it assist them?
When they're applying for some grants, so they've been questioned from the state on the state tobacco and through the State Department of Health, just about how our policy was pretty succinct. It was basically 2 sentences, and it encapsulated that we're tobacco free. And so in talks and them being able to go out and secure some other grant funding, they do the SWAT program and the tobacco cessation program. So it was one of the things that would just be beneficial to them. And so as a request to us, they had given us some model policies that they had found through other districts. So
Okay. And I know that this may not be the time to ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And I don't have the code of conduct here in front of me. And as you know, I've never been a principal, but you have. And you've heard me reference this multiple times when we've had expulsions here. We'll look there and there's a kid that he's had a vape or he's had tobacco products multiple times and he's finally here. What is the process? Like say I'm 15 years old and I'm going to your school, you're my principal, and you catch me with a vape. What is the process? Because I'm all for, I mean, if we're really serious about we hate these things, you just got caught with it, it doesn't need to be Johnny, throw that away and let's go on to class. What are the steps?
Well,
And just because I can't remember.
yeah, they have a matrix for progressive discipline. So first offense you get this, second offense you get this, third offense you get this. With tobacco products, there's some things that are tied to state statute in regard to potential criminal aspects where they have to go to court. They could lose some. They could be fined. They could be potential to lose driver's license even. So there's some another aspect that's tied. That part of it we don't have any control over. That we're dependent on our partners in law enforcement and the judicial system. But
Okay. I just genuinely want that stuff out of our schools. I hate that mess. And I think I'm not the only one sitting here that hates that mess. And so it's.
So we will look at that again over the summer. In fact, Mr. Gore has already have plans to meet with our district administrators who dish out the discipline, make sure that our matrix is working, adjust that as necessary. We've done some things in regard to vapes by our Halo systems. I believe you're aware of that. We're in different locations within the school. These are basically detectors that can detect that and send a text or an email to administrators so they can go immediately and try to catch kids that are doing those things in our bathrooms, locker rooms, areas like that, which are the most dominant or prominent locations for those kind of activities. So
Okay. And I don't want to sound like I'm not a guy that's all for, I'm for due process, and everybody makes a mistake I get that, but it's just, in my opinion, vapes and that stuff are an epidemic that we got to fight as hard as we can.
It is, I agree. It's a product of society, product of home life. I guarantee you that probably, more than half of the vapes that our kids have came from their home.
Yes, absolutely. And that leads to my next question is, now I'm an adult, and I'm at a basketball game, and that thing. What happens to an adult?
They're asked to leave if they won't comply, and we put it out there. It's actually in this particular policy. It's one of the differences between the other one is there's a section in there about enforcement.
Well, I asked that for this reason. We generally record these. I want people to hear this. I knew that answer, but I wanted it said where somebody could hear it. And that's all.
They're asked to cease and desist, and if they don't, then they're asked to leave, and if they refuse that, then they're trespassed and they don't come back again.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
I
it.
have a question. Madam Chair? It kind of piggybacks off of what Mr. Asbell just said, and reading it over again, I just had a quick question about it's 8A, and at the very end it says K through 12 receive tobacco prevention education. I understand that. Involving students in active hands-on learning experience. We don't do any active hands-on, do we, with the younger ones? Within
I
the-
think it's just prevention, and that's part of the things that we get through our partnership with the coalition, and having basically also kind of going along with, hands in hand with the Too Good for Drugs, and also tobacco. And you mentioned, Mr. Asbell, about the vaping. I know one of the things with this, I happened to be at the coalition's meeting last week, and they partnered with basically alcohol, tobacco, and firearm, sent some underage kids throughout Levy County, and trying to not only make sure that they were being carded if they were underage, and the alcohol, tobacco, firearm officer that was there said that Levy County had done better than some of the neighboring counties, but that's one of the things that they also, with that partnership, are trying to help with that, to create and go out and educate the shop owners with making sure that they are checking and doing what they need to do to help with that, so.
And I think the hands-on learning experiences obviously are based upon what's age appropriate. In fact, if you read just above that, it does point out it has to be age appropriate.
Age appropriate.
So,
Okay.
I think that, anytime that kids can have hands-on learning experiences, it's more impactful. But I'll say this, that, this type of educational opportunities have been going on for a long time in Levy County. I have never, to this point, ever had a parent complain to me, both either as a principal or my current role, about anything we've done in regard to this type of instruction that was controversial or they felt like was not
Too much.
age appropriate.
Could we, moving forward, I think I asked Mr. Coward this one time, and maybe council can suggest something. Could we, as a district, all the vapes that come through and the expulsions that we see, could we place our own fine on the guardian, on a family member? We can't, as a district,
I
go,
don't think we have the statutory
okay,
authority to do so.
just a thought. Sometimes if you hit them a little hard. Okay, just curious.
So we need a motion to approve all of these to continue advertising, is that correct?
We'll just bring it back before you next
Okay.
board meeting for your approval.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, Mr. Lott. At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. I'll call this meeting back to order, and at this time, I'll call up Ms. Lake, please, for our budget workshop.
No.
This is a workshop, so feel free to interrupt me anytime you want. I tend to talk fast. I'm sure many of you have noticed that by now, so I'll try to slow it down. There's a lot to go over because a lot has happened. Our legislature has been very, very, very busy. And now DOE is trying to take all of that and turn it into and implement how us at the school district are going to move forward. So I'm not going to touch on everything, but when I tell you there was a lot, a lot. So this is just a timeline of our budget dates for trim. So our next meeting will be July 20th. It's a Thursday at 6 p.m. that I will present the proposed budget and the trim ads, which yesterday they were still being revised by Department of Revenue because of changes that are occurring in this cycle. August 1st will be our tentative millage and budget meeting, and then September 11th will be our final. This is just to give you a little update on where we are. I ran these numbers right before I uploaded this PowerPoint this afternoon, so it's pretty good, pretty current data. We have collected 99% of our estimated revised budget. The outstanding balance to collect is really just a few little items coming in, and mostly our indirect costs from federal programs. We haven't moved those funds yet. Next are our expenditures. Again, we've expended 99%. We have one payroll outstanding we'll do in July, we'll pull back in June. Those are for people doing summer hours, things that are up to June 30. We'll pay them in July and pull those funds back over. We have paid out all the contracts to date. We have one more accounts payable run, and that we will do in July and pull back in June, and that's where those other encumbrance amount is coming from. So once we spend all of that, we will have at 99% expended budget. We're at 98 right now. So we're looking pretty good. All right, so I just wanted to talk about some of the challenges as I'm building the budget for this year and some of the changes and unknowns that we're facing. So the biggest one is House Bill 1 with universal vouchers. We are seeing that providing student mobility. We're not the only game in town anymore, and we need to conduct ourselves as such. And they have created, they being the legislature, at the back of the bill, a program called Educational Enrollment Stabilization Program, and we will talk about that and why that is important. Next, we'll talk about the SBFP and those collapsing categoricals that have been moved into the BSA, but how misleading that BSA growth really is. And then we'll talk about our increase in FRS. We need to talk about a little bit about the 8-year drop, so the drop extension and what that looks like in terms of costs. And then we'll talk just a little bit about cost increases and inflation that this budget will show. And again, it's just that increased cost of doing business on a fixed income. We do not drive revenue. We can only control cost. So, going back to the universal vouchers, there's no longer an income cap for the FES EO, educational options. I can never remember that one. So those would be anybody, that they don't have to have an IEP. They don't have to have a unique ability, which is the 3% growth rate attached to that, which will sort of clear the benches and let take those people off the wait list and put them into the FES program. Along with that, we have a homeschool option. There will be a 20,000 student cap in year 1, and then 40,000 students growth per year. And I think, Mr. Superintendent, it's 5-6 years, I think it caps, or it gets unlimited.
Right.
There are some district opportunities in House Bill 1 that I will encourage the board and staff and union to take advantage of. Those are deregulation options, things that they could do to deregulate some of the things that we do. We are regulated. My ad is regulated to the comma placement. Mm-hmm. Is that important? How much time does it take to do the trim process? There are multiple things we could look at for deregulation. And that's important because our opponent is a deregulated market, an unregulated, market. of private schools. So we need to try to level that playing ground, so that was very nice of them to put that in the House Bill 1. We need to think about opportunities such as part-time enrollment. What's that look like? Can we become a contracted services for students, since students have an option, have a choice in how they want to be educated? Some concerns, and Mr. Bennett can speak to this, is student mobility. The funds following the students has not really been a reality for districts. So what that looks like is someone goes in and applies for an FES scholarship, they get awarded the scholarship, they show up at Chiefland Middle High School. They've been at Chiefland Middle High School all year, he's reported them all year, and no, we're gonna trust the private school. We're gonna trust the private school, we're gonna continue to send that money out of your program, and then maybe in a year later, we'll believe you and we'll cycle that money back. For us, that's been about, how many students? 10 students, so you're talking $80,000. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're some of the other counties and they have, I think Miami-Dade had 25,000 on scale, that's still huge. And there is just a mistrust there in the private and the public institutions.
And
So,
this, I'm sorry
sorry,
to interrupt
go
you,
ahead.
but I will share that this has been something that we've been sharing with DOE going back to when Chancellor Oliva, so over a year and a half, talking about, for us, we see it in students, primarily an area where you see a lot happen where someone will leave Williston Elementary, Joyce Bullock, Williston Middle High School, and go to Vision Christian. So we see that, and then they come back to us, either relatively right after the FTE window, or so later in the school year after the second count. It's been a topic of conversation among superintendents. Just as a former point of reference, Suwannee County is looking at 67 kids that have been reported in their district for both FTE counts, that they've repeatedly raised that to DOE, and that comment was a direct quote to the Suwannee superintendent about that DOE basically told them they were going to trust the private school, that they were right and the public school was wrong. So.
And it's 10 today, it's 10 before the floodgates
Right.
open. House Bill
Right.
1 has just opened the floodgates.
At the conference on Friday, I did sit through the legislative update down in Tampa, and Dr. Danielle had Representative Tuck come in, and they had questions being kind of shuffled to her, and that was one of them. Will it actually follow the student? She's pretty convincing, but she was adamant that they are definitely looking at that money following the student.
I think when I raised it to Chancellor Oliva, the number of kids that I tracked that we either lost out where they were with us for one FTE count and then left, or left us right before count and then came back, we'll say left us in September 15th and came back in November 15th, gone 2 months. So I was tracking, we were at about 32 kids, so just in the Williston area of that. So, and that was a year and a half ago whenever Morgan and I shared about those. And unfortunately, and I think this is a piece, and I know we're kind of segueing here, out of no fault, not laying any blame or anything, but primarily then we see gaps, or we see a student who is going to fail 3rd grade, does not want to go to summer school, they leave us, they go, and private school has the ability to say, I'm going to go ahead and push that kid on to 4th grade, even though they have not been doing 4th grade work, and then they come back to us. And thankfully, we've done a really good job with Mr. Lott, Ms. Hanlon, of writing into our pupil progression plan that, okay, we're going to put you back in 4th grade, but we're also going to test you, and if you're not on grade level, then we're going to need to put you back. And you may get phone calls about that from parents who are unhappy, but I think we're doing a disservice if we take and we leave that kid in a hole in 4th grade and we don't go ahead and move them back to 3rd grade to at least try and fill the gap and be behind 1 year versus being behind a year and a half. So.
And I don't know if this is in House Bill 1, but I just wanted to touch on it really quick under the district opportunities. I didn't put it out there because I wasn't sure. But class size penalties are going to be waived through 2026. You still have to do a compliance plan, and you certainly want to adhere to class size. But where this helps a district that's been struggling with vacancies, this year, I think our penalty ends up being around 40,000. 40,000 is almost a teaching unit, so maybe that would help some of those loss of funds if they relaxed that penalty for a little bit, just to see, to answer what the districts are struggling with, which are an abundance of vacancies. All right, so proration, so I talked about the educational, it's EESP is the acronym when we get to that in just a minute. But that is supposed to offset proration. We all know that as the counts occur through MIS, they kick off a calculation. So the second count is tied to the third calculation, and the third calculation is where you're gonna possibly get a proration. So the way our Constitution is written is the budget that's approved is fixed, right? They have to open up session, go back and do the budgeting. So it's fixed. So if they have capped it at a certain number of student population, which is capped at education budget, and then they have an influx, the thought is that Levy's under, Alachua over, and it's all gonna kind of net, and we're all gonna be okay. We would still have our own district reduction because of FTE, or gain because of FTE growth, but the state can come in and do a proration. They have not estimated through their forecasting model enough student population, thus the budget's not big enough to feed the education. They will come in and they will just reduce every district in the state of Florida for that proration, right? So our concern was with opening the floodgates, not really knowing how many students are going to take advantage of FES in the capacity that they can now. How do we know that we're not going to build a budget on this set number? We're going to build a budget on this estimated loss to FES, but the state overall is going to have underfunded education, and we're going to come back and take another ding in the third calculation. How do we negotiate? How do we do anything when we don't know what we're looking at? This is the first year. So what they did is they put $350 million in the back of the budget. They also increased, if I'm not incorrect about this, 40,000 students in the FTE count. One thing, so many bills, so many iterations. And hopefully they feel that's going to be enough to stabilize this program and you won't see a proration. And I'll get to exactly what the bill says in just a minute. So that's positive. That was very positive. But it says may or shall. It doesn't say it's going to continue in year 2, in year 3, in year 4, in year 5. So this year, we'll see what it does. We don't know about next year. And you'll see a lot of that we don't know about next year in this presentation. All right, stop calling it scholarships, just school choice, because it just, you can, you know, be educated however you want. So we've seen this over and over again. I won't go through it. You've seen where I've tracked it since 17, 18. That's just because that was my first year, and we know that finance didn't exist before I walked in the door. So, just a joke. So that's my point of reference. So you can see where 1920 was the first year of FES. And what's important in this, and what I want you to pay attention to, is growth in FES. And then look at what our estimated FES is for this year. So you've got year 1. Year 1 had a cap, and it was only for unique abilities, or those with IEPs, and we got $260,000 we lost there. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't. Was it IEP related? It was not.
We're
Do you
talking about
remember?
okay?
The first year of FES. It was
There was an
only,
overall limit.
but it wasn't tied to the
They were
IEP.
starting to roll McKay and Gardner
All
in
together.
together.
Okay.
So it eventually, yes.
So then you see year 2, it goes from 260 to 610. Then you see year 3, that's I think when they rolled in Gardner, Hope, and it was supposed to not, it was supposed to be an offset with revenue, and we're still not 100% sure if it was, because at the same time this is occurring, we weren't getting the numbers of students that we were being calculated on. We knew what he was sending up, we just didn't know what was impacting our budget. They're now more transparent. So year 3, which was last year, it was 1.7 million just to FES. This year, they're all one big pot, and it's about 2.7 is what we were calculated at in the third calculation. So next year, they're estimating us growing from 2.7 to 3.2. A $533,000 growth. Just does not seem realistic to me that that's all we would see in the growth of this FES program to our district. So, we'll go to the next page. I like that it's EESP because I kind of feel like we need ESP, right? We need a crystal ball, we need to be able to predict. They can't predict any better than we can. So they're building in this back of the bill language to help protect us if their estimates are off. So, our district average growth and loss in funds to scholarships since the implementation of FES is 55.5%. It's huge. So year 3, we lost an additional 1.2 million. So year 3 was that much higher than year 2, 124%. So prior to FES, the average growth in scholarships was about 14.5%. So you can kind of start to see why McKay probably wasn't taken off the way it was intended, so let's create FES. So Senate Bill 2500 estimated the growth in funds lost to FES for us at a 20% increase. 20%, that's where that additional 533,000. We will have lost between this year and last year 18.5%. So we're pretty close to 20 already without the change in House Bill 1. So along comes EESP, and I won't read it to you, but basically it says, hey, we're going to hold you fixed to what's either in your first calculation or what's in your second calculation, so that the unweighted FTE are not less than or greater than the school district's funds that are prorated based on that FTE or calculated based on that FTE in either your first calculation or second. So that means when Morgan sends up his numbers in October and there's either a huge jump in FES statewide, we're not going to be penalized with proration for that. They're going to, remember hold harmless that happened during COVID, where they were going to pay us for the amount of money, or the students that were forecasted, not actual? This is reminiscent, kind of what that is. And I put the student cost per unweighted FTE at the bottom. That's what that $9,000 was. So it's really great. I don't know if it's sustainable, and I don't know if it's going to be enough.
So you said either or, they're going to take it from calculation 1 or calculation 2?
The only thing that changes in 2 is really your RLE, and there's a little bit of probably
Okay.
truing up with some Survey 5 data. It's not a lot. It's not a huge change.
Okay.
All right, so why is this so important? Well, this is so important because in my budget, I'm going to build it based on their growth of 533,000 because of the EESP. If I had not, if you had told me to do your best to guess what your growth is going to be, it would have been more along the lines of 1.4 million growth. It's almost 1.5. And that would have devastated this budget. So that's kind of where we're hoping and praying, and we're putting like that, all of our pigs in one basket, that we will be able to keep a proration from occurring with what's in the back of the bill. And my estimate comes from, again, what I said, the average growth, which was 55.5%. Now, we didn't see that in year 1. You can see how it trended in what the year 1 growth was, year 2. Year 3 was a really big jump. So you get kind of, and then it's kind of stabilized in year 4. But I think that's why we got a broadening of FES, because they have access to all the same data we do, and you see trending up, and it just sort of isn't going the direction that it was intended. So now let's talk about the base student allocation and the great growth that the BSA is, which it's increased to $5,139.73, and that is an increase of $552.33. It's fantastic. So now let's see what's happening with that increase in the BSA. So let's just look at this year's budget, and let's look at the categoricals that have been collapsed into the FEFP for next year. I'm doing jokes to myself. I'm afraid I'm moving too fast and y'all are missing out on the notes. So far good. So far so good. So the BSAs that have collapsed, or I'm sorry, the categoricals that have collapsed are instructional materials. The funding policy remains. Reading program, the funding policy remains, which means the statute that directs us that has those particular things that we need to perform for these allocations remains, even though the allocation itself does not remain. Teacher salary increase allocation, the funding policy remains for that. Sparsity, I just wanted to show what it was. It was 3.7 million this year, and it doesn't have any funding policies. It was truly flexible funding. Teacher classroom supply assistance, that's about $300 a year. Teachers get it for consumable supplies in their classroom. That is in the BSA now, but the funding policy has remained. It's changed slightly. And then the total funds compression and hold harmless that was created during COVID has gone away. So those categoricals that are being collapsed are $6,453,406. So now let's transition over to the first calculation I'm looking at for this year. So the collapsed categoricals should match the increase in the BSA or be greater, right? No, it doesn't. So those collapsed categoricals are about 30,000 less than the growth of the BSA, which isn't bad, except the DCD's gone. They put in this cost comparable wage factor.
Just renamed it.
Just renamed it, but it actually gained us $900,000. So if they had not done that, we'd be $900,000 less than that 6.424 up there. So it's a good thing they did. We're happy about that. And that's the small district differential. Everyone else is at a 1, I think. So the categorical, now there was categorical growth with remaining categoricals at about 2.7 million. When you compare that growth to the reduction, we still have a deficit in categoricals of about 3.7 million. So then you would subtract that 3.7 million from the 6.4 at the top, and you see we have a net increase, our gross increase of 2.9 million. Again, that's fantastic. Really, it's great. But there's more. So one thing to pay attention to is look at that state increase of 1.6 million. Local, which is from our local taxpayers, is 1.3. Okay. So now we'll get to the exciting part. There is this new categorical, I'm going to call it that for lack of a better word, but it's called State Funded Discretionary Supplement. It is simply a flow through for FES. We will not see a dime of it. We are just the conduit to get it to FES. So if you look at my budget and that growth, that 2.9 million, that includes that 600,000. It's not ours to keep. So I immediately have to back it back out. The minute I back it back out and apply it towards state growth, our state growth has only grown 996,000. Does anybody in this room think it's a coincidence that the CWF amounts to about $900,000? I don't know, might just be coincidence. So we also have charter revenue growth of about 35,500. We got to back that out because that money's not ours. Again, it flows through us into them. And then we need to talk about the funding policies that we still have to fund that are now sitting in the BSA. I've underlined TSIA because that's the only really new money. Those other budgeted amounts for reading and instructional materials, that's the budget position it had this year. So it is not, it's not affecting the variance that I'm talking about. So those, but we would have to subtract the $74,703. We'd have to subtract that out, right? So once we subtract out that, because that's new money we need to budget, we budget for the other things that we need to. I think we're having to budget, it's in statute, we have to budget at the same level that we budgeted for this year for those reading, instructional, and teacher classroom supply. We've now whittled down the 2.955 to 1.8. But if you go back real quick, the state was 1.6, and I've now whittled it down to 1.8. So this is a lot of pressure on our local. So that 2.955, go to the next page, has now turned into 1.8. And the growth is local of 1.3. So now they hold hands, they do. The state and the local hold hands in this budget. But I always think it's important to know where your money's coming from and why it's so important. So we're a flow through for FES and charters and state funds. For fiscal year '24, the budget also has to account for increases, so there's pressures on this budget. There's increases that we can't avoid. FRS has been increased to the tune of about $632,000. There's teacher salary increase maintenance, that's new money in this budget that needs to be pulled out to maintain prior increases of $86,000. We've had an increase in risk management insurance. We've had to add new positions because we are projecting growth in the district to the tune of about $623,000. That's 7 teaching units, 1.5 units that were sitting on ESSER need to go back to the general fund. We've got 2 new aides, a new 10-month receptionist out of school. We've added, one of those aides is a pre-K aide, and we've added a pre-K lead, and we've added a new pre-K unit at JBE. We've also had an increase in SRO contracted services because their costs increased the same as ours, and that's $151,000. Now you subtract all that, and we're to a whopping $185,000. That looks like it's new money, flexible money, but I haven't factored in any of the other cost increases that are impacting the upcoming budget. I haven't looked at any of that yet, but I will. So we'll go to the next. I won't make you follow the math trail. I kind of leave it at the 185, but you get my gist. There's so much. You look like you're getting a $6 million increase in BSA. That's where we started. But then you got to look at, well, what happened to your categoricals? What new items are you having to fund out of the BSA that you didn't have to before? And then you're trying to capture all of the growth and the things that are occurring simultaneously that are putting pressure on your budget to erode those new dollars. So let's talk about teacher salary increase allocation. Just because, the only reason this is on here is because they've changed the name. And so I want to talk about it. And they've kind of changed, relaxed some of the statutes governing it a little bit as well. But it's now called classroom teacher and other instructional personnel salary increase. But we will always call it TSIA because when you get an acronym in education, you don't. That's what it is, and that's what it will remain. So there's some concerns though with the TSIA in the BSA. So I don't know if you knew this, but the way it was created before when it was an allocation is they set that in that second calculation, which drops in July. That is your fixed categorical. It is not subject to the flexibility or the movement of your FTE. It doesn't grow if your FTE grows. It doesn't decline if your FTE declines. It is what it is. So it's stable. So we're negotiating based on that stable number. We're also negotiating on who we have sitting in the seat in July, which has always been problematic. Even more so now, because we all know not everybody's hired by July, not even by August. So that's one of the problems here, is now it's in the BSA. So the BSA moves up and down in a normal year, up and down based on the counts. Hopefully never so wildly, but I've seen it fluctuate pretty decently. So the plan itself is required by October 1st, should be board approved by October 1st. So that is prior to October and February FTE counts. Now this year we have the EESP. So that gives us a little bit of confidence in going out and negotiating because we know they're not going to hopefully come back and do this probation. But if this wasn't occurring, this was a different year, we're being asked to do all of that now with money that's not protected in the BSA prior to any count that we have in the school to see, or in this district, to see what our FES is, to see what any of our student counts are. The House Bill 5001, which was a $15 an hour that hit last year that grew our BSA, that's always been in the BSA, but again, it's the same principle for that money. That money fluctuates based on your FTE. So now we have 2 really big salary items in that BSA. So, and another problem with the way they calculate the BSA is it's based on 1.41%. So the new money is 1.41% of base funding. What did I just say was in base? FES has got a contributor to base, and your charter schools. We do get to back out charter schools, but there's some discussion about whether we should be able to back out FES. For us, that's about a total of about $111,000, but new money it's about $26,000. So you're bargaining on money that's not going to ever hit your district. It's going to flow out of your district and go to scholarships. So those are some things to just think about. Try not to make this really doom and gloom, but these are the things that I sit in my office and think about all day long. Maintenance is also insufficient. So the maintenance funding that we've been getting since the implementation of TSIA has not been sufficient to actually cover the raises. And I'm not talking about the general fund portion contribution, the TSA itself. We have to track it and report it every year. So it's pretty clear to see what that maintenance is. The other, so I'm sorry, let me go back to where the maintenance. So the maintenance needed is about 1.7 million and we're getting about 1.4. So there's a deficit of about 218,000. It's not, you know, the end of the world, but it shows you that it's just not, it's not matching dollar for dollar what that program has done. All right. So let's talk about FRS. So that keeps increasing year after year after year after year. And this year it's a 1.66% increase, which is about 630,000. But you can see how it has trended up since 2021. The problem with the increase in FRS, the only place to cover this money is any increases in your BSA. So the minute your BSA increases, you're sort of taking that money and moving it over to cover some of these cost increases that you know are coming your way. And that is the same pot of money we would have used, again, for salaries, to create new positions, and to provide educational support for the kids. Any other thing you can think of that's new usually comes out of that new pot of money. We do have an exciting thing happening in FRS, and that is drop being extended to 8 years. So this will allow support staff to, also will allow support staff to enter beyond their initial window. So we're gonna have new people coming on board for 8 years that thought they couldn't enter drop at all. We're gonna have people extending drop, and then we're gonna have new people going into drop that are now gonna be 8 versus 5. And it's exciting. We feel like this is one area that the legislators were listening to us, and they were trying to help address some of the vacancies or employment opportunities that we have here in the district, and letting these people with all this knowledge sit in their chair for a little bit longer. And the benefit definitely outweighs the cost, but there is a huge cost, and this cost is going to be a pressure on this budget now moving forward. And where you're going to see that cost is just in the difference in the rates. So someone who's not in drop this year, this new year coming up, would be 13.5%. Drop is now going to be 21.13%. That increased by 2.5%. And so the drop rate is 7.5% higher than the regular class rate. So they would sit at that rate for 8 years. So I took an average salary of $60,000 and kind of broke it down and showed you what that means. So at the end of 8 years, you have about an additional $36,000 in costs. Now that's one person. I don't know, we don't know yet what this is going to look like. That's again something else we need a crystal ball for. Does anybody have any questions?
Just 2 slides back.
Okay.
Fast talker. The maintenance was 86,000 back when you were talking about that.
That's new.
That's new.
New to the budget.
Okay, so past years,
Mhm.
did you put something in a maintenance for salaries?
They always tell me what is
They
maintenance.
right.
It sits in the allocation, now it will sit in the BSA, and I just compare it to
Okay,
It was
to what is
categorical.
needed. It was
It's been-
I'm sorry, it's categorical before. Now it sits in the base, but I need to know of what is important for me to identify is what's new. So if my maintenance going into the year, this year was 1.5, now it's 1.6. I know 100,000 of growth out of that BSA needs to be pulled back out because it's really going into maintenance, and I need to try not to budget it with some other expenditure.
okay, thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about the change in revenues that we have experienced since 18-19 versus the year we're ending now. I chose 18-19 because that was pre-COVID. So there's some financial benchmarks that we have. Of course, we all know what 2008 is. We have a before, we have an after. We have COVID now, which was 19-20. We have Parkland, which increased some costs and a lot of laws that we needed to address in 1819. We have TSIA that came along in 2021. Then we have House Bill 5001, the $15 an hour, which was last year. So those are all sort of those financial benchmarks that I have when I know some really big things have happened to my expenditures. So, and revenues. I backed up to pre-COVID. So we could kind of look at the revenue growth and the expenditure growth over the same time period, knowing all of those, or most of those things were occurring during that window. So our revenues since June 30 of 2019 has grown a little over 8%. You can see that local sources have increased about 15%. The transfer line is so big because you've got ESSER flow through happening in there. You have expenditures happening in the general fund, and then you have a recovery from ESSER, which shows up as a revenue, and then shows up as an expenditure, growth in expenditures as well. And you can see state sources, which aren't all FES, but the majority are FEFP, but the majority are. You can see a growth of 3.88%. Expenditures during that same time have grown 17%. And you can see the growth, 12% to salaries, 17% to benefits, 28% to purchase services. The growth there is due to some of those vacancies sitting in the salaries. The salaries and the benefit lines are suppressed because we have this lapse time and we've had vacancies over this timeline. You see a growth in material supplies. That is a direct relationship to that transfer line I told you about. That is where instructional materials are sitting, and that was one of those huge items that we paid for last year and this year that we recovered from ESSER. We've never done full implementation with instructional materials because the funding is insufficient. And then other expenses, those are not all sub costs, but a lot of that would be sub costs between 18-19 and this year. And you see your sub costs, of course, are going to be higher when you have those vacancies as well. But that's still huge. I mean, what's double or more? 8% growth in revenues, 17% growth in expenditures. So then let's look at what's been going on with wages at the same time. So at this time, between 18-19 and 2023, you see the general fund has had 11% growth in wages. The majority of the growth is occurring in the general fund, even though the variance is higher for food service. But you can see kind of the breakdown where those increases are occurring to 11.5 total growth. And then FRS has grown at a rate of 55%. And then I wanted to go back and I'm looking at that, let's look and see what base, not what everybody's salary has changed during this time, but just what base, just what we advertise as base. We've seen a $10,000 growth in teacher, we've seen a $4.68 growth in ESP, and then we've seen roughly a $4,500 growth in administrative base pay. You can see the percents associated with that. You can see the majority of the growth for teachers came over 3 years because of TSIA at almost 27%. And it just so happens the percents are the same. I kept checking them, but they are. And the ESP growth came last year with the $15 an hour. But we still have it. We still, and I'll get to that, that's still a problem there too. So change in student enrollment during this same time. So we've grown 8% in revenues, we've grown 17% in expenditures, we've done some things with salaries over that period. So what's happened to our revenue driver during this time? So what you see here is we've grown 9% from May 19 to May, when compared to May 2023. But of that 9.1% growth, 79% went to somewhere other than our district schools. So if those 79% had stayed with us, I think that's the 412 students, we lost out on $3.5 million. 412 students didn't choose to stay with us. And in 1 year, we lose about $9.5 million when you look at the difference between the district enrollment in May and the total enrollment that are not going to our schools. That's a little over 1,100 students. So I just thought it was kind of fascinating to look at that, especially since it's school choice and we're having to try to think about this. How do we become the choice? So recapping that again, 8.2% growth in revenue, 7.4% growth in expenditure. It's red because it's a terrible number. You see the growth in the salaries, FRS. You see the district enrollment growth at the same time. Keep in mind your salary and FRS are kind of suppressed because of the lapse time. Lapse time is that period of time between a vacancy, if someone leaves a position and someone fills the position. And then 79% FTE lost to other than our district schools. All right. So here are some cost increases that are going to impact the budget this year. Mr. Masters spoke to some of this when he talked about transportation. That is why I put transportation up there. When I start thinking about the areas that are going to really grow in our budget, I'm looking at fuel by itself. You're seeing that fuel has grown between July 21 and July 23, 275,000. But you see it sort of flatlining. This year it's only grown about 7,400. Electric's exactly the opposite, and you see it trending up. You see the growth is continuing. Travel's just trying to get back to pre-COVID. Travel isn't out of control. It's just something I watch because it got so low during COVID that I knew at some point, maintenance is another, they get so low when we weren't here that at some point it's going to start trending back up and get back to that 18-19 cost, and I don't have a budget built on an 18-19 cost. So, you see travel, I imagine we don't have June activities in there yet. Travel, I think, will be pretty close to what it was last year. I don't think it's really going to be a decrease. Contracted services, that's another area of growth. We're having to meet, I think of it mostly our SLPs, our behavior therapists, mental health, safe schools, the SROs, those all sit in that line, and you can just see the growth there. And then transportation, growth. I can't say it any better than Mr. Masters, but that also would have sub costs in it as well. His maintenance costs, that's pretty much everything transportation. It also would include the fuel costs, most of the fuel cost increase at the top if it's directly related to transportation. So that's another budget that we have to watch. We do have a categorical for transportation, but it doesn't grow at the same rate as the costs do. But they do a really good job at capturing all of the FTE that we can for that. One quick thing before we go through my ESSER has suppressed some of these areas. It has suppressed some contracted services for ESE. It has suppressed custodial costs. It probably has suppressed some travel costs. And you're going to start to see, as ESSERs move out, those costs are going to come back up. Because, and you can see it in custodial, you'll start to see that in custodial, and you see it in the pattern there. 21 was 680, and then it dipped almost 100,000 in 22. It's not because we bought less, it's because we shifted that spending somewhere else. That spending's going to have to come back. So, concerns that we have, we can't grow revenues, we can only control costs. It's just really going to make us look at things not differently. We are pretty good at controlling costs, but we really have to hone in on that now. We don't have any control over regulations or state mandates, and most often that results in some kind of expenditure or underfunded mandate that the district has to contend with, and I think of school safety and I think of mental health needs, and those categoricals are not sufficient to cover those needs, so the general fund has to come in and pick up those additional costs. Of course, we are going to see growth in scholarships. Concerned about the ESP program. Is it enough to avoid proration this year? And if so, what about next year? Just mentioned some inflation and cost increases that we're having to manage and control if we can. We haven't even talked about technology. We have increased technology needs, and there is no additional funding. There is no funding source for that built into the FEFP. Then we also have not general fund, but charter schools. So we're the charter schools, capital outlay. The charter schools will now, they get a piece of our local dollars through the FEFP because you see the relationship between the local dollars and FEFP. We also have 1.5 mil, which is about 4.5 million, of capital outlay. Capital outlay, pay for those buses that are increasing that Mr. Master talks about. They pay for a majority of the maintenance activities. We are now going to have to share a prorated share with the charters. It's not based on, I think it was Apaga, one of them did a study, and it's not needs-based. So what this is
Based
I'm
on
gonna-
FT.
I'm gonna oversimplify it, but when we divide the number of district FTE by the amount of funds available, what's that dollar per head? Now I want you to give that dollar per head to every one of your charter, based on your charter population. For us, we're in a little bit of a different situation than some of the larger districts because we do have some debt service, about $667,000 that'll come off the top. So we'll reduce that capital outlay with that. We do have payback. I haven't read the bill yet to see if it will account for payback. If so, we'll be able to reduce the payback, and then we'll take what's left, reduce what they're getting out of PICO funds. Remember a few years ago, we used to get PICO, they stopped giving us PICO and they only give it to charters. I think for now, for the next few years, they're gonna keep PICO funds available, but they're probably gonna transition that out at the same time they're transitioning us in, and we have like a 5-year phase-in for this. It's like 20%, 40%, 60%. Rough math, it's going to be the equivalent of probably a bus if charter schools and district FTEs stay reasonably the same as they are now. So, we also do a lot of other things with those capital dollars too, beyond just purchase buses. So some of the things, I feel like I never update this slide because we still have these same challenges and we're not ever really able to address them. Of course, we have salary compression in all schedules, not one, not two, all. We have health insurance increases. Luckily, that has not been passed on to the employee for the last few years. That's mostly due to ESSER and being able to recover those COVID costs. We have FRS increases. We have that ESSER cliff. We've tried to manage that in such a way that it's going to be more like a wave and not a cliff, but we are still going to have to move some commitments that we made through ESSER into the general fund. Traversa is one of them. We are seeing the inflation or increased operational costs that we're contending with. We will always have those underfunded or unfunded mandates we have to contend with, it seems. We now have this public education, which is a highly regulated market, competing with an underregulated market, which is your private entity. That's something else we're having to figure out. And then, of course, we have recruitment and retention issues that we need to address as well. So I feel like I need to end this with something nice, but I don't know. Does anybody have any questions?
That's a lot. It's a worry.
It's a lot. This year's a lot. And there's so much that's unknown, so it'd be nice to look at this presentation and do it next year and kind of see where we end up. But it is my responsibility to ensure that what I'm presenting to the board is fiscally sound. It saves jobs. So I'm always going to side. I'm always going to be a little fiscally conservative when it comes to this, especially when it's unknown. The saving grace is the ESP.
Any questions?
We don't have a test yet, are we?
Yeah.
I hope not.
No test.
Okay.
Exciting time.
Did you understand it? Do I need to go back over it?
Yeah, I think it's a lot, but I
No,
mean,
it's
a lot.
I understand
It's
it
a lot.
I get it.
somewhat, yeah.
It's a lot.
Has DOE come out with, I know they set aside that 350 million, and there was talk during the conference and all about they still don't have a dollar amount of where it's going to come from. Like the,
It's not recurring funds, I believe. It's their,
but everybody was asking Representative Tuck, like DOE and the state, where are you going to get these additional funds from? How are they going to fund it, to source it? And they still hadn't come up with an answer.
Since,
Have they said anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything come out of DOE. So everything has been come out of the legislature on as far as that. If you look back, coming out of COVID, when things started opening up, and so I'm gonna approximate because I don't know how far back, but I know for sure, year plus, year and a half plus, every revenue estimate that the state revenue estimating committee has had has been exceeded. So there is a budget surplus. I believe the figure that is talked about is if you took every student across from Pensacola to Key West, doesn't matter, public, traditional school, charter school, home school, private school, I think I've covered the gamut there as far as those, that what you're looking at is about $4 billion is what public education would cost. You can see what they're pushing towards, that they're driving to. House Bill 1 is a universal voucher system that here is your $9,000, and you take your $9,000 and little Jimmy goes, and you get to choose. If little Jimmy goes, as he did to Chiefland Middle High School, then those dollars stay in here. If little Jimmy was to go to Creekside School, then those dollars would go there. When we talk about things, and you've heard me say this before, about the train was coming through and they had the votes for House Bill 1, there's no sense to stand on the tracks. Deregulation is the best thing that we can then come out of this.
Right.
And we've been talking about this since February, the February FADS meeting, of trying to figure out things that we can take off our teachers' plates, things that we can take off of district staff, things that we do that have no basis on student outcome. And that's really, right now, what the best that I think that we can affect change in. When you look at the dollars in this budget and what it's gone, if you rolled everything back, and some of you have been on this board going back to 08, 09, and there, if you took those figures and backed out all the categoricals, the increase in teacher salary, the increase in instructional materials, you're at about $125 increase from 08, 09 to where we are right now. You're in business, you're in business, you're in business, you're in business. So you see the inflational costs that are going up here. So as politely and as kindly as we can, to continue sharing with those in power, to help them understand of how this budget affects Levy County. It would be great if family empowerment, it would be just pulled out of the FEFP. That would be one of the greatest things, that if they say, okay, we're just going to fund that it's not a part of the public system and the funding mechanism of what we have. It's really frustrating whenever you sit in a meeting with staff plus House members and you ask how the formula is derived on the hold harmless figures, and they basically point to one person and say he knows the formula. And so we've given up, and they're willing to take questions and whatnot, but there's still not. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, and the great Oz is behind the curtain, so to speak. So I know that doesn't answer totally your question with that. The $350 million is in the back of the bill. It's somewhat the in-case emergency break class. That's what those figures are, because they underestimated. Florida is growing, with people coming means students, and we'll see. I believe I'm going on a limb. I believe we'll be a little bit isolated here initially, but the things that are concerning to me is the fact that we lose our local 1.5 capital outlay mill to our charters, because, and I've started having these conversations to help them understand, this board, nor our district staff, make any decisions. Breezy doesn't make a decision saying, okay, we've got 5,000 students, we're gonna build a warehouse that's, and divide it by 5,000 students and put that amount of money in there. That's not how you make a decision. Breezy doesn't walk out here and say, oh, this roof is 5 years old, you know, we've got 5,000 students, we're gonna put a new roof on here. No, we take a look at the roof, and when the roof is leaking, or when the roof gets some type of damage to it, then we're gonna repair it. And I think those are the things that we need to kind of further carry back to our legislators, and hopes that maybe with charters and this, not to go against the bigger districts, but I think there needs to be some type of carve out for small fiscally constrained counties. And I think that's a way that maybe we can affect change, so to speak.
We are hearing a plan for charters today and privates tomorrow, that this funding is going to evolve into a literal, universal voucher all the way around, publicly funded, so, period.
You know, we don't have a funding mechanism other than, the 1.5 capital outlay money is the only true thing that we, and this board, get to make a decision on levying. And that used to be 2 mills. And so, when you're looking at the property tax, that increase, I think it was about 16 or 17%. Let's also remember that every year it's been the rollback rate, that it's built, that increase is not an increase on this board sitting here and saying, I want to raise RLE, local millage. It's on vacant land being built on. It's on things, people improving their homes and those type of things. That is what this county has seen. And so I think we just need to continue to talk. There's other districts that are in worse shape than us, and I'm thankful for that. I feel bad for them. There's places where they're smaller districts where their capital outlay for this charter stuff is going to be in the millions of dollars to them, just because of their tax base. And so, are we cautious? Very much so. But I think this board has put a great deal of thought. 2 of you sat on this board in 2013 whenever we hit 2.78%. And it's out of your being conservative and looking forward and trying to do right by our employees, but also being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, that we've been able to climb out of that. And we put a policy in place to make sure that we had 5%. And I think that we're at that point of time where the rainy day is coming, and we've got to be, tough decisions will be coming. So a lot of doom and gloom there. So
I told you it was going to be upbeat. I felt like that was upbeat for me.
So if you don't have any questions for Kim, so
No.
Wish I hadn't come back.
I know, I'll tell you.
Should have waited one more.
I know it. I know it. But thank you, Kim.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that.
I don't even
Very
get close to
great
my bedtime, I'll
presentation.
be honest
Thank you
with
so
y'all.
much. At this time, we welcome any public comments or anyone who would like to address the board with anything. If not, we will move on to our minutes, and they've been postponed until our 7-11 meeting, so we'll move up that. We'll go to our consent agenda, and I'll start with Mr. Whitehorse.
All my questions have been answered.
Thank you. Mr. Asbel?
I was hung up and I did not get a chance to ask some questions. So I got a question to ask, but then I also have something else. On my question, when we look at the interlocal agreements, and I just want explanation. I'm not opposed to it. I just want explanation. We have 2 contracts with the Sheriff's Department. One is to give a one-time supplemental payment of $202,000, and the other's $800,000, for lack of a better explanation. So, why 2?
Ms. Lake.
So one is built off of the allocation and the language that follows that allocation and how we have to give that money for the SRO program. The other is the additional funding that comes out of the general fund to support that funding because the allocation is insufficient to support the SRO program that we must have in place at our district schools.
Okay. Okay. My other thing is, it's not necessary, it's sort of referenced on here, but I wasn't here last time, and I would have brought this up last time. I seem to remember we do exit interviews when someone leaves us and find out why you're leaving. And where this struck me is at the last meeting, there was a person who has been at Bronson Elementary School forever. Not only was she at the school forever, she graduated from Bronson, her child graduated from Bronson, her mama graduated from Bronson. It's a long time at Bronson. And it wasn't just a person that showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning and left at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a person she's a person who's very involved. She was as Bronson Eagle as anybody could be. And to see this person leave us to go to, it's no knock on anybody, but it has to do with the time frame I came through Bronson. We hated Gilchrist County. To see that she's going to Gilchrist County, what takes a short enough Bronson Eagle and makes them go, okay, I'm leaving this district, and I'm using her as an example, to go to this neighboring district. So my question is, following up on that, I know she didn't move. I know her husband's job didn't change. There's certain things that you understand. That's why you left, okay? Yeah. My spouse gets a great job in Jacksonville. I'm shutting down the Bronson office. We're going. I get that. If my mama is sick and she lives in Tallahassee, I'm going there. But this person didn't have any of that. So my question is this. We wind up in collective bargaining talks, all these things where we're trying to figure out salaries. Is it a salary issue? Is it there's just too much pressure in the Levy County district, or leadership is lacking? My school board member stinks and I just got to get away from him. It could be anything. So my question is, can we get, I don't want to see everybody's exit interview, but just an idea of why people leave. Because I'm one of these people that believes, hey, once you go to work, especially if you go to work in Bronson, why would you ever want to leave? And I feel that people, like Mrs. Brookins, she grown, raised right there in Chiefland. I'm sure she feels the same way. Why would anybody ever want to leave Chiefland? So when I see somebody, and I don't know what school she's going to, that is as hardcore a Bronson person as I am, say, I'm going to go to work in Trenton. What caused that? And that's a concern of mine. So is there a way to compile these, even if they're anonymous, to go,
I'll be happy to talk with you after.
This person did
after
this.
the meeting, so I don't think that they prefer I share the reasoning. So, but I'm in referencing the person, so I had a long.
Well, and in that, in a further bigger thing, I mean, we are asked, it's not my job to hire and fire, but we vote on reasons why they left. And I'm sitting here going, and we get calls. Just as I'm going to get a call about why Timmy, who was at private school in 4th grade, is going to be over here at JBE or Williston Elementary, is now in 3rd grade. I'm going to get that call. I'm going to get a call from Mama. Why is that person not here? And my answer does not need to be, or it doesn't need to be, well, they got a better offer. Well, what's the better offer? Why can't y'all make a better offer? That's my question. I'm talking on a big scale, not just that one person. What do we got to do? Because every year we have people leave. There is absolutely nothing you can do about, hey, I got this job offer. I would never hold a person back. I believe in, if you got a better opportunity, take it. But when there is a lot of it, you go, what happened? What is the deal? Is it leadership? Is it money? Is it benefits? Just can't. I'm expected to answer a question that I don't have enough information to answer, even when I vote on something. So that is just and I want to hear the story, because I mean, when you see it, it would be the same thing if John Lott all of a sudden said, hey, I'm going to work for Gilchrist County. I'd be like, why? If Whitehurst here said, going to work for Anderson Columbia, what in the world? So that's a concern.
I would share, so they are getting a raise going over there, so, but I will also share that we've had people that have left us and gone over there for a year and come back, so.
I understand that. But, and my point, and you're a Bronson dude, you're a Levy County dude, I think you can understand it.
There's no doubt
I'm gonna drive a whole lot further to go to work for $2,000. That does not register in me. That doesn't. So, and I don't know dollar figures. I'm just making up a number. But gas is high. So why am I going to drive 15 miles when I was driving 3? So that's all I have. Sorry. I look forward to talking to you.
Okay, that's all. Ms. Boyle?
All my questions were answered with Mr. Coward this morning. What I thought of when you were talking, Mr. Asbell, is the surveys that go out to all the teachers and staff that are anonymous. I know district leads probably review those, but it might be nice if the board, I don't know whether it would have to be a closed session or whether it could be an open session, that some of that information gets shared with us as well when all those surveys come back in. Because I know they go out. I've seen them for years and years. I just haven't seen the only time I saw a compiled report was way back when on DAC, the district advisory, as a volunteer. So you kind of see the surveys come through for each school because you're a representative that tallies them. But it might be nice for the board to see some of that, and that might help. That was my only thought when you said that, but all my other questions were answered.
Thank you. My questions were answered, but Ms. Wade, do we always get an exit interview? Do they always give that to us? So
No.
that's not always possible.
It's not, and it is anonymous. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't know who is returning. Sometimes you can kind of read between the lines if we talk to them personally, but we don't always give them that.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think we did, just want to make sure I know that's difficult. Thank you, all my questions have been answered. Do I hear a motion to approve our consent agenda?
I make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. Did you get a chance to read over our finance agenda? Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much. Mr. Cowart, do you have any comments for us?
I do. So, in light of all the doom and gloom, so with the budget, I would like to share that we did have an appropriation, and the appropriation was for $427,000, and I'm happy to report that we were able to come back with 300 of the 427 for playground equipment. So I'll be bringing back some recommendations to the board to help guide the process on where those playground equipment would be best served. So with that, so that's a positive there
That is.
with that. And then I know some of you have some great things to share about. Had the opportunity to go down to the state FFA convention last week, and I would put it up there as one of the premier leadership organizations, but also one of the best ways to go and fill your cup if your cup was running low. That you get to see about 5,000 kids that are dressed up in the blue and gold. They're respectful, they are driven, and Levy County and the Tri-County area has been was well represented down there. So, and then I would just share that we're in the heat of summer, of hiring, and people are moving and positions, different things with that, and some trainings going on. So we've got quite a few people that are scattered this week and last week, and just appreciate all the hard work that goes into that, and looking forward as we kick off negotiations tomorrow, so with the association, and which is an accelerated timepiece. And so just really would like to point out, so you see the effort that Ms. Lake puts into this. So, and in other districts, I think this is one of the unintended consequences of the teacher salary increase, where they have departments of people that's solely their job. And so she's trying to build a budget, she's trying to build ads, and then also in the process of trying to keep the ship afloat and leading negotiations. So just appreciate her efforts. And also would like to share on Saturday, had the opportunity to go. Mr. Masters and Mr. Joe Wayne went out to to Vision Christian, so we were invited out there to an area where they were calling it Empowerment Day. We're trying to, the Sheriff's Department, basically it was a little bit of a job fair type deal. So trying to go out and attract some new applicants for our bus driving spots, and also had the opportunity to have Tamika from Grand Canyon, so I always get that. So she was there, so we had requested her to be there to kind of help and share some information for those that might be interested in going back to school, or be those that may be a part of our Para to Pro program to can help them continue on. So good event, so a lot of community support, and I think it'll grow, but really appreciate Mr. Masters and Joe being there on a Saturday to kind of help with that, and it's good to be out there. And the last thing, I won't end on a sad, but so two things, is on Saturday, Miss Wilma Holman, who was the first food service director in Levy County. She was a cafeteria manager in Cedar Key, and when the district started growing and it got to the point where we needed someone to be leading that food, so back in the old days, so and so she was our first food service director, and she had been sick for a while, and just appreciate her. She did a phenomenal job. She was with us for 30 plus years and then retired. So, and then I'm just looking forward to hearing from you board members to share about Not to Steal the Glory. So we've had some really, really good times with FFA, so to share out that. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Coward. We'll start with Mr. Whitehurst, see if anything he wants to share.
First, I'd like to thank the board for allowing the Williston Middle School to do their demonstrations and last week and or the week before last. And last week it paid off at the FFA convention. The conduct team that we saw, they ended up finishing 4th in the state. So that was good. And Annabelle actually was the state winner for Creed, so she'll be moving on to nationals in Indianapolis in November. So that's exciting.
Annabelle who?
Whitehurst.
You know her people?
And we also, Williston, Reagan, Hancock, and Avery Lewis, they placed first in their division state for the Agri-Science Fair. Brooks Yancey, he competed here in extemporaneous, so he did good. We had Carly Bertrand and Grayson Hires were alumni essay winners. Will Conquest was a finalist for the STAR Discovery degree, and the FFA alumni chapter got 2nd state for outstanding alumni, and all 3 chapters earned premier chapters and had 100% membership, which means that every person that's in ag class is also an FFA member. So that was so exciting. It was exciting to see. I went down there Thursday and excited to see all the Cedar Key, Yankeetown, Bronson, Chiefland represented well around there. So it's just nice to see Levy County, like I said, wearing the jackets, and that's a Levy County right there. So it was very good, and so that was exciting, and appreciate all the presentation, Kim going over, and Breezy, and Mr. Masters, and so I know it takes a lot to put in all this, and it shows in y'all's effort and what y'all do, and it's not just a job, it's y'all care about what you do, and it shows. And I'm glad to see Mr. Aswell's back.
It's good to be seen.
Yeah, he does make the board meeting drag on this a little bit longer. I will say that. But other than that, it's good to be seen.
Good to be seen.
So thank y'all, and I hope everybody has a happy 4th of July.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aswell.
Well, hello. You may not know this, but I've been a little out of the loop for a couple months. So I'm not as versed on our FFA participation. I know that the Meeks boy and the Lane boy won with the essay thing, and they're going to, that qualified them for national. I think that happened too. And I knew about the young Whitehurst girl that's half Bronson.
That's true. That's true.
We knew she would. I knew when she went. I was like, well, this fixes in. But I'm not going to talk about all that stuff. I'm gonna tell y'all something. First of all, I gotta say thank you for all the calls, texts, prayers, the visits, the jokes, the food, all of the good things that I do not deserve because I am Cameron Asbell and I can be a little bit difficult. But it was really touching, and it's if you haven't had your heart surgery, don't volunteer. It's a special thing just to answer. I am preemptively answering questions. No, I did not have a heart attack, but one was coming and it was going to be a doozy. But we have corrected all that. Do I feel better? I don't know. I didn't feel bad before. I didn't have sense enough. I just thought I was getting old. Recovery's going to take a little while, and I appreciate your patience. There are little things I've noticed that are changing. They have told me to reduce my stress. So from now on, when we have an expulsion hearing, someone else has to be mean to the children. I'm going to sit back and just smile at everything. Now, that being said, I also need to tell you this. I may be one of the few people that voted to save his own life. And I say this because our clinic out here, you won't ever believe how proud I am I voted for that thing. When my spell, and I call it my spell, when my spell hit, I refused to go to the emergency room despite my wife's insistence because, well, if you go to the emergency room, they'll put you in the hospital and want to do surgery on you. Not too smart. But I would go to the doctor, and shouldn't admit this, but it had been 5 years since I had been to the doctor. So long that the ownership of that place has changed. The people providing the service had changed. And Dr. Roberts saw me. And were I in a regular doctor's office, I thoroughly believe it would not have gone the way it did. I was there for probably an hour. And there ain't nothing left to check on Cameron Asbell that woman has not checked. And she made sure. She did an EKG on me. She found there was a little blip. Had I been at a regular doctor's office, they said, you need to go see a cardiologist, and sent me on my way. Dr. Roberts called the cardiologist, and within an hour and a half of being there, I was in a cardiologist's room, office. Next morning, I was in the hospital. It all happened very quickly, and I thoroughly believe that joint out there saved my life. They are not employees of ours, and I have no authority on this, but every one of them would get the award we give. What's it called?
Impact.
The impact award, because they sure had an impact on me. Anyway, I say that to say I am very proud of the work they did for me, and I know they've done it for other people. And were it not for that place, I don't believe I probably wouldn't be here. But I am, and getting better every day. It's a long, slow process. There's still some pain. There's still some, I get tired quick. I probably can't go run a marathon anytime soon. But we're getting along. But the big thing is I really appreciate all the concern. And it made a chubby boy from Bronson feel good. And probably got me back on the road to recovery quicker, knowing so many were concerned and were on my side. And I hope to not let y'all down. And I plan on being here next meeting. So
Good.
I look forward to seeing you again. And let me just tell you, all you people look really good. Y'all are some of the most beautiful people I've ever seen. It's amazing when I see people again for the first time after this. Devin stopped by and saw me, and I thought I was going to have to hug on him because he was a good-looking guy, and y'all are all just beautiful because I really didn't think I'd see some of y'all again. And so go home, and ladies, tell your husbands, or your significant others, man, and Bronson told me I was good-looking tonight because you are, and gentlemen, tell your wives that you are truly handsome because I'm so happy I get to see y'all again. That's all I have, Mrs. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Asbell. Ms. Boyle.
How do you follow that up?
How you doing?
It's the story of my past 3 years. How do you follow that up? I do have something to say to that, though.
I know you do.
That little clinic out there, I will say this. I just walked in there because before my little procedure, they wouldn't do it unless I had 2 certain blood tests that they needed, and it happened kind of quickly. And I walked in there with my letter that I received from the cardiologist, and the nurse said, "Do you want to talk privately?" Took me right in the back and talked to Dr. Roberts, and they said, "Sit down," drew my blood, and I had it in 24 hours. And I was able to send it over to the cardiologist's office. No ifs, ands, buts, not, no, we can't do this. And it was pretty fabulous. So, definitely kudos to them. Other than that, thank you for all the presentations tonight and the policy work, and I know y'all are doing quite a lot. And congratulations to all the FFA students. I'm not going to take anything from you, but I would like to say that the one Levy County FFA Chiefland student who got to perform and sing, Rachel Couch. That I could not imagine looking at that audience and getting up there and singing. So that was really incredible to see her do that. And Cedar Key is moving right along. And
We had 2 that performed.
yeah,
There's a Williston girl that sang
Williston did too?
sang the national anthem.
I didn't get to see her tape. Okay. But that's huge to have them
That's huge.
perform. And happy 4th to everybody. And I'm so happy you're sitting where you are.
We hard people, we stick together.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We are glad you're back, Cameron, and you were missed.
It was boring without me.
And also, I'm so happy that Mr. Cowart got to go to Wilma's funeral. She was here, you know, when I was here many years ago, and she was a great person. I really, really liked her a lot, and just so sorry that I wasn't able to attend. She's a really good person. I would like to congratulate some Chiefland kids that did a wonderful job, and it was that what they accomplished is fantastic. Ari Grant, he was State Star Green Hand. Hunter Sharp, State Star finalist and new state area VP, which was wow. That was a nice surprise. That was neat. Cade Meats, State Star Agriculture Replacement. Savannah Wade, we know her. And Savannah Barron, Bastow, sorry. They were the ornamental horticulture demo production, is that right? Yeah, they did a great job. And Reagan Barnes, state champion prepared public speaking. So really proud of those Chiefland students. They did a great job and worked very, very hard. So that's great. I want to wish everyone a happy 4th, and if there's no other comments, then meeting is adjourned. Thank you.